welcome back into the Between the Hash Marks podcast. After a brief hiatus and with the 2025 NFL Draft hours and days away, depending on when you're listening to this, where hope springs eternal and optimism is abound for all 32 teams, I'm Matt Lombardo, joined by my friend, colleague, mentor, and the purveyor of the Two Deep Zone, fresh off the exhaustive and exhausting Two Deep 96, getting you ready for the top prospects in this draft. Mike, you look ready for this thing to finally get underway.
So tired, so very tired, but with better sound quality, I hope, thanks to this new microphone that some of you can see if you're watching this. But I'm done. I'm done mentally. I'm ready for the draft to happen. I'm ready to talk about draft assessments. I'm ready to talk about something besides football for a few weeks. How you do? How was the Easter Bunny kind to you?
It was very kind to the children. The kids loved it. We took them out to Hershey. We saw the Reester bunny, our favorite over corporatized Easter bunny. I texted you the photo, and you made a quip that it was the Senior Bowl rabbit.
It's the Senior Bowl bunny. Yeah, it's actually that's Jim Nagy's job now. He's in that. He's the Reese's Reester bunny now.
Yes, the Senior Bowl bunny. How about you guys? Good Easter for you guys. Good holiday.
Very good, very quiet, it's different when you're an empty nester, man. It's very different. The kids come home, they eat. On the Saturday night, they go to the bar. It's a whole different vibe. And then Sunday night comes, and it's my wife and I having a cocktail. Nothing wrong with that, by the way.
And then you look at the calendar and you're like, oh my God, the draft is 4 days away. We better get ready for this thing. And obviously, if you enjoy the podcast, please go ahead and subscribe in the Apple Podcast Store, Spotify. Check us out on YouTube, on my YouTube channel at Matt Lombardo 975. Be sure you click through all of the Two Deep 96. There's so many fun, interesting, informative nuggets in the Two Deep 96 over the last few weeks at the Two Deep Zone. Subscribe to the Two Deep Zone on Substack. And if you're a fan of my work and my insight, check out Between the Hash Marks and subscribe there on Substack as well.
And you just put up a big mock draft here on Monday. I couldn't be bothered, but you got one out there, got one with some inside voices in there, etc.
Yeah, I think at the very top of the mock draft, I basically wrote that mock drafts are a fool's errand. And
Yes.
You see people like Todd McShay and Field Yates, and I love Field, great guy, by the way. Really stand-up dude. Mel Kiper Jr., these guys put out 10, 15, 20 mock drafts through the course of, back in November all the way through the morning of the draft. I can't bring myself to do it, Mike. I can't do it. So if I'm going to do one, I'm going to do it right, and I'm going to ask around executives and scouts and sources to get their thoughts on this draft. And by the way, Mike, most interesting thing I heard from an executive, we've kind of talked about this off camera as well. He called it the strangest draft in years. There's 4 blue chip prospects in this draft, but Cam Ward is not one of them. He thinks Cam Ward could be the best quarterback in this class. Doesn't view him as a surefire franchise quarterback. There are only 4 blue chips in his opinion.
By strangest draft, doesn't he mean like crappiest draft? Is that what he was trying to say?
Yeah, I think there's some of that in play here, right? Because it's almost like, and I think you've heard this a couple places as well, that, the guy that you're picking at number 6, you could pick at 26 or 36, that they're just the same guys, the same caliber of player, that there's not this clear-cut separation of blue chip, elite, can't miss franchise offensive tackle, elite all-pro edge rusher. There's not a collection of these guys. And Mike, I don't know what you think of this theory, but I think that's why we haven't seen one single team trade up in the first round yet, because there's just, look, if you're the Cleveland Browns, you're taking Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter, right? If you're the New York Giants, you're taking Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter. But after that, why would you trade up? Why would you pass on the opportunity to take those guys? And if you're any other team in the league, who else is there that's worth trading up for that you couldn't get at your slot?
That's it. I think one of the things I've been saying, I'll probably write it on draft night if I haven't already written it. Cam Ward is fine as the first overall pick, but he's not a first overall pick you trade up for. If you're there and you need the quarterback and that's the resource allocation, it's like, well, it's justifiable. This isn't the first year in history that the number 1 quarterback wasn't really one of the top 3 or 4 guys. He's the number 1 quarterback. That's different. The moment you're a team like, say, the Giants, who's like, we're going to trade up to do this, you're taking a risk that, like, Cam Ward's capabilities doesn't support. Like, he's not worth this year's number 1 and like next year's number 1 and a number 3 or whatever it would take to get this guy. And then you're right. The difference between like the number 1 offensive lineman, whether that's Campbell or Membo, and the number 5 or 6, is minuscule. It might be a matter of what your scheme is or how you perceive these guys. Same with the number 2 edge rusher below Carter. And like down to, I don't know, 8, 9, 10, 11.
Right.
They're
What is the difference between, say, a Mike Green and Shamar Stewart? Very similar traits. One had a lot of production at the
right.
University of Marshall. The other has elite athleticism, but
Yep.
no stats to back it up. And you're taking a bit of a gamble there. What's the difference between the tackles, like you spoke about? How wide is the difference between a Trevion Henderson and a O'Marion from North Carolina? It just seems like the drop off within the positions, at least in the first 2 rounds, doesn't feel that significant.
The blue chips are Hunter, Carter, GNT, and Mason Graham. Is that the
Yeah,
four?
those are the four. Those would be my guess of the four.
Right.
Yeah.
And even Graham is like, I don't know how much better he is than Nolan. Looks like Nolan is slipping for character issues. I thought Derek Harmon was as good or better than these guys. Now he's only a 1 year production guy. So even a defensive tackle, or first of all, you're taking that defensive tackle. I don't think any of them are Jalen Carter.
No, but a lot of but taking a defensive tackle early feels like following the blueprint of Howie Roseman and the Eagles and watching what they did to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. And it's a copycat league. People do silly things for quarterbacks. I think we're going to start seeing teams do silly things for edge rushers and defensive tackles.
And that's why I have a whole bunch of questions. I want to ask you because you're the one who did all the work on this one. I was cavorting with the Easter Bunny a little bit over the weekend, and I'll start with this. Like yours begins with Word Hunter Carter. Mine would begin with Word Hunter Carter. Yeah, I think Word's contract signed. Is that official?
I don't know if that's official, but last I heard, he was getting fitted for a Tennessee Titans jersey. So it's going to happen. It's just a matter. Look, if you're Brian Callahan, you need to get going here, right?
Right.
Like you need a quarterback. You're picking number one. Will Levis ain't it. You have some pieces on offense. You need a competent quarterback, and you need to restart your own clock after that disappointing first year. I think it's now a coin flip, Mike, about Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter at number 2. I think that's the most fascinating pick in the draft because if you're the Browns, what do you do here? Do you go and get Travis Hunter so that the rookie quarterback you inevitably take next year is ready to roll with an elite weapon? Or do you kind of give a wink and a nod to Myles Garrett and say, hey, Myles, have fun racing after the quarterback and the defensive player of the year with Abdul Carter on the other side?
Right, right. Where that could be a little present from
Yes.
Garrett. Like here's a friend.
A push present, so to speak, if this was a different type of transaction.
Right, right. And the whole thing with Hunter, he's out there saying if I can't play 2 ways, I'm going to retire,
Yeah.
which is a little bonkers. But it's like him sort of like planting his expectations in the sand. And the Browns have been all over the place in response to that. Where at one point their GM compared Travis Hunter to the slugger Otani, the slugging.
Yes.
He's like, well, he's like Otani, and I'm like, that's great. Otani hasn't pitched in 2 years. So
Right. He got hurt. He never pitched again so far.
right,
Last I checked, Otani isn't having guys charging after him and tackling him every single snap. Right.
right, right. But you're comparing him to this guy. Well, he's a great 2 way player. He doesn't play 2 ways anymore. So like, if Hunter is hearing this, he's got to be saying, well, wait, are you saying that? Yeah, well, I could do this. You don't want me to do this. But you don't think right now it's inevitably Ward, Hunter, Carter, 1, 2, 3. It could be the other way.
I think it's inevitable that those are the picks. I just don't think that it's inevitable that that's the order. I mean, listen, Andrew Barry went out to
Yeah.
State College to take Abdul Carter out to dinner 2 or 3 times. I don't know that I could name you 3 restaurants, and I'm up at Penn State 6 Saturdays a year. I don't know that there are 4 restaurants in State College worth visiting Abdul Carter for. You know what I'm saying? Like you go to the Field Burger, and that's nice, and it's a great novelty, and it's a great burger. Where are you going from there? The corner room, and you're eating like 1950s homemade, cuisine. Like if you're investing that much time going there to spend time with Abdul Carter, I feel like the interest has to be tangible and real. And look, Andrew Barry's the same GM who went to Indianapolis, stood at the podium, and said, "We're never under any circumstance trading Myles Garrett." Well, if you're going to pay Myles Garrett all that money, maybe get him a running mate.
Okay. I can see it. By the way, they're on Jimmy Haslam's expense account. They might be eating at some of the cheaper places that you went as an undergrad at 2 in the morning. That might be all that Barry can afford when he goes out there. Interesting. You get to number 4, and you got Membo going
Yes.
to the Patriots. Not Will Campbell, but Membo. Tell me about that.
Yeah, call this an informed hunch, so to speak. Every year it seems like they're with the offensive tackles. We can all write the same four offensive tackles in the same order that they're chosen every year, and it doesn't always play out that way. I think Campbell has better tape, but two different teams I spoke to, now they might have just been, blowing smoke to create a narrative or change a narrative, but multiple teams that I spoke to were concerned about the short arms. And one executive told me we take measurements for a reason. If we're not going to value that information, why do we do it? And
Right.
if that's the case, then Mumbai number 4 to the Patriots as that franchise cornerstone offensive tackle could be the pick. And I think Campbell doesn't last on the board much longer after that. But it's just one of those things where I'm putting together the mock and I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm hearing this from teams, and I'm also sitting here remembering how many times we thought that offensive tackle X was the generational prospect, and he's the second or third tackle chosen.
Right, right. And when you look at him on Men Boom, this is a guy out of Missouri, much more raw, not as much starting experience. No one has as much starting experience as Will Campbell, but just rocks guys, just absolutely rocks guys. But he's mistake prone. He's the kind of guy where it's like in 3 years, if he doesn't get completely obliterated as a rookie, he could wind up being the better player. But that's interesting because they don't have 3 years in New England. They need somebody to play probably left tackle, probably pretty quickly along the way, and that would be where I would thought Will Campbell would go there.
And he might still wind up going there. Maybe they view him as the more complete player, and they feel like they don't have time to wait to mold Membao.
Yeah,
But we'll see how it plays out. I think that that's a tackle inevitably, whether it's Membao or whether it's Campbell, because you can't send Drake May out there to be a crash test dummy in his second year. You can't invest that money in Stephon Diggs and not be able to utilize him because your quarterback is getting pressured 14 times a game. It can't happen.
you can't. It can't happen. I just hate the idea that the Pats are just going to stand pat, draft for need. It just seems like the way they do things now. It's like we go out and get the guy that's sitting there at the top of the board that you get guys, and it doesn't. They don't have any, I don't know, lilt or like inspiration to what they're doing. Spending money, getting better. We'll see.
Hey, Bill Belichick's in Chapel Hill. He took the Belichick way with him.
Bill Belichick's in Chapel Hill, and whatever you do, do not criticize Steve Belichick.
No, no,
No,
you'll end up on the blacklist.
he's his own man. He's not tied to his daddy's apron strings. He's definitely not tied to his new mommy's apron strings. We're not going to go into that right now. But because I want to say, because like right now on the gambling sites, it's Ward, Hunter, Carter, Campbell, and then a fifth, and that's pretty much every prop you can get. You can't even get the Membu prop right now, which is interesting.
Interesting. That's interesting. So it's almost like Vegas knows that Campbell's a lock.
It
We'll
just
see. I'm either going to look like somebody who took a risk and came up looking like an idiot, or it'll wind up being the one mock draft out of the tens of thousands that have been made that got it right.
Go play it. Go play it.
Yeah.
And just play Membu first tackle, Membu to the Patriots. You feel it, go for it, see what you're getting out there. I have heard other things that I'm not like criticizing you. I've heard other things like, oh, they might be looking in this other direction. I've definitely heard that he's the better option. So we'll see. Let's go down to the Saints. Let's go down to you had Shador to the Saints, right?
Yes, because I don't know how you can stop looking 12 minutes into the future when Derek Carr gets hurt and he's possibly done for the year. Like that almost forces you to have the quarterback conversation, does it not?
Yeah.
The
Oh, yeah.
long-term quarterback conversation.
Yeah, well, right. Well, when Derek Carr might be done and your other choices are Spencer Rattler and Jake Hayner, you better be having that conversation. Here's my question though. Can they stand pat at 9?
Yeah, I've seen Shador going off the board back end of round one. I've seen him slide out of the first round. I've took part in a mock draft with the people over at Threads. I
Oh, cool.
made the selections for the Chicago Bears, the Cincinnati Bengals, and the Eagles.
Nice.
NFL Threads account is tweeting them, posting them out right now.
Beautiful.
Between you and I and our listeners, Shador Sanders was not chosen in that first round.
Interesting.
Yes.
That's interesting. Who did the Saints person pick?
I believe they went Jackson Dart.
They went with Jackson Dart. Okay, I would not take Jackson Dart over Shador Sanders, but I've seen that out there, and I get it. But I also get the possibility. The Jets are in there. They're just going with Justin Fields for a year. You've got the Raiders up there. They're in the short term with Geno. Here's what I did: as I'm making a little list of things I'm looking for on draft night. If the Saints solve their quarterback situation either with Shador. Well, let's just say with Shador, they have to do it without giving up one of their 2 second-round picks. If they decide they have to move up, that's fine. But if they're not, if they just throw a second-round pick at somebody and move up a spot or two, that's a fail. That's a fail for a team that has a lot of other problems besides quarterback. If they go with Dart and then they go with Dart ninth overall, you're talking about like reaching at quarterback ninth overall.
Yeah, that's a big reach. Would you advocate taking the best player available, whether it's one of the edge rushers, whether it's one of the tackles, whatever the plethora of needs are in New Orleans, taking them at 9 and packaging 2 picks, the 2 second-round picks, to move up with, say, whoever's at number 30 to catch a falling knife in Shador Sanders?
If that's the case, and you got so you went out there and you got an edge rusher, you got Shamar Stewart or somebody like that at the top, and then you package your seconds. As long as you don't overpay for it to get Shador, if you're packaging to get Dart, I worry. Remember
Yeah,
just how the Saints. I was talking about the Saints earlier on a podcast. They have $100 million now that's dead, and that's the actual dead money, which is guys like Marshawn Lattimore and Jameis Winston still, etc. Derek Carr, let's call that dead money. Ryan Ramczyk, he just retired officially. That's dead money.
set money.
I'm going to call Taysom Hill dead money. He had an ACL tear in December. He's 35 years old. That's 100 million dead. So when
Yeah.
you're saying, well, we got a first and 2 second-rounders, ideally you're going to pick a first and 2 second-rounders. You need guys to come in and play on their rookie contracts and replace the $100 million worth of deadness.
And then not tie yourself into 2 fifth-year options, 2 first-round contracts at that point, to hamper your quarterback, your salary cap situation even more.
Right, right. Now, again, if it's like, well, yeah, we went out there and we got Shador Sanders at the end, and we got Mason Graham ninth overall. It's like, I got what you did. I can recognize that. But if this is a situation where they get nervous because the Jets are like playing with them, or the Raiders, Tom Brady's out there mumbling stuff, and they trade up and they lose picks, and then they get Shador, that's a fail in my
That's a
mind.
big time fail. That's a misallocation of resources. That's an overpay. Big
That's
overpay.
that's an over. That's the Saints, though. That's what they do. So you had 3 quarterbacks in the first round because you had Dart going to the Steelers.
Yes. I don't know how they emerge out of the first round without a quarterback. I just don't know how they do it. I mean, when you're looking at Mason Rudolph as your best option after you traded for DK Metcalf, listen,
Yeah.
if you're going to trade for DK Metcalf, you need a competent quarterback, right? You need somebody that you can develop, somebody that you can point to and say, we're going to try this out. This kid might be the future. Because otherwise, what are you spending that money for? Why did you trade for a wide receiver if you're going to throw Mason Rudolph or some 4th-round pick off the streets in Pittsburgh?
Skylar Thompson.
Oh,
Because they
oh,
brought in Skylar Thompson. Yeah, I don't know. They seem to have they put themselves in this box where either they give Aaron Rodgers more money or they give him whatever he needs to be happy, which God only knows if society possesses such a thing, or they make this move. And that's what's interesting. So the over under for quarterbacks is 2.5. It's only minus 135, not a lot of meat on the bone. You'd go over on that,
I
right?
go over on that only because I think when you start looking at, okay, we're going to lock Cam Ward into number 1,
Yep.
you just need 2 teams to take a quarterback. Who saw the Atlanta Falcons taking Michael Penix Jr. last year, right? Like, who saw that coming?
Right.
You're going to have teams do things, and the Steelers should be in the quarterback market. When you're looking at their options, when perhaps you're tired of being strung along by Aaron Rodgers. Now, this all changes if at 3:30 in the afternoon on Thursday, Aaron Rodgers puts pen to paper and says, hey, I'm coming to Pittsburgh. This all changes at that point because I think there's really only 3 or 4 teams that could take a quarterback in round 1. In my scenario, it just so happens that Rodgers doesn't want to play anymore, or the Steelers get tired of waiting and they take Dart to try to reset the clock, give Tomlin somebody to help develop and build around.
We all see that, we all see Aaron Rodgers trying to upstage the draft, right?
It's happened before, right? Didn't it happen before the trade year where there was all this smoke that he was going to get traded to the 49ers that popped up on draft night? Do you
Oh
remember
my
that?
God. Oh my God. It's a very cloudy. It's a very cloudy
Yeah.
memory. When
Yeah.
was this? This was still when it was with the pack?
It had to have been 2018, perhaps
Oh my
2019, maybe.
gosh.
I
Oh
just
my
remember
God.
all of this speculation out of nowhere. Well, Aaron Rodgers requested a trade. He could go to the San Francisco 49ers and go home and blah, 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 blah. So pulling out a pen to sign a contract at 3:30 in the afternoon, hours before the draft gets underway in Green Bay of all places, does not seem out of the equation for me.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. But you're right. Right now, I was going to go. I was going under 2.5, under 2.5. And then you realize the Saints and Steelers have left themselves with so few other options right now that it's hard to envision a scenario where they don't do it. Again, they might do something. Oh, we'll trade back up late in the first round or something. But it's hard to see them coming out of Thursday night saying, "Oh, this is fine. This is fine. Mason Rudolph's fine. Spencer Rattler's fine."
If not a quarterback, Mike, who do you? What direction do you see Pittsburgh going? Is it an offensive tackle like Josh Campbell? Is it who do you see there?
That's the problem. When you get down there, it's like I don't love them. You know what the Steelers like to do? They like to get another edge rusher. Just get another edge rusher. They are like, TJ Watt noticed that everybody else got an extension. They're in that little corner of hell right now. So like if they had their druthers, they would have had Rodgers signed right now, and they'd be like, we're gonna put another guy behind Watt, behind the guys we already have, behind Highsmith, behind the other fellow whose name's escaping me.
Hayward,
Hayward, and there's another edge. He's got a brother who plays with Wisconsin. Anyway, Herbig,
Herbig. Yep.
Herbig, and we'll just like do that succession. But you can't do that now. You can't do that with DK. You can't do that with Pickens still on the roster. You've got to make this kind of move. Other thing I noticed is you had three running backs.
I do. I do. And again, this is one of these copycat situations. I think the rest of the league looks at the Eagles, the Ravens, and the Packers, and they see what Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, and Josh Jacobs did a year ago. Running backs might not matter, but they seem to accelerate timelines if you're close or you think that you're close. The Raiders don't have time to wait, right? Like the Raiders, I have them taking Genty at number 6. Pete Carroll's not getting any younger. You went out, you traded for Geno Smith. That's a move where you're going to try to make a run right here, right now. Get a guy who averages 7 yards per carry. Get a guy who pushed for 3,000 rushing yards or whatever it was last year and all these touchdowns, 26 touchdowns. I think it was a chains mover and a yardage factory. Then I look at Dallas. Sure, they brought in Miles Sanders, but that feels like the ghost of Ezekiel Elliott's past, 2.0. So you put Omarion Hampton there. Jared gets his running back. He can turn back the clock to how they made those deep runs in the playoffs, or at least runs to the playoffs back in like 2010, 11. And then you look at the Denver Broncos, Taylor's oldest time, Sean Payton taking an Ohio State player, Trevion Henderson there. So there's your three.
That's the one where I pause on. Because I think they need help. I think that they might want to look at. They were going to look at tight end. They got Evan Ingram. They might be looking at receiver. Henderson is just. I don't know. I don't see that one necessarily. But I ask you: you have JT to the Raiders. That's at -125 right now.
Yeah.
You taking that?
I think I'm taking that. I think there's two spots. He either goes off the board at number 6, or he certainly doesn't go off the. He certainly isn't around past the Bears at number 10. I
Right.
think
The
that those are
Bears.
the two spots.
See, I like the Bears as the landing place where it's like, okay,
Yes.
solve the offensive line more or less, have the quarterback, have the coach. Coach is a running oriented coach in general. Now you bring this running back in, and you have enough in place where you can get value out of the running back. I don't know if that's really the case for the Raiders. That doesn't mean that's not what they're thinking.
Right. It's how Tom Brady might look at that and say, "Ooh, we can win with that."
Right, right. Remember when we had Lawrence Maroney in New England?
I mean, my Marion Barber.
Oh gosh, oh gosh. Yeah, and so for three running backs, over 2.5, that's at +220.
I think I'd take that. I think I'd have to just throw $10 down and see what happens.
Okay. Okay. I'm not taking that one. I'm not, I would go under with the quarterbacks. I mean, over with the quarterbacks. I'm not going over 2.5. I'm looking at like the edge rusher slash defensive line. I don't have it written down, but it's like at
Yeah.
8.5. That's what I think.
The interesting nugget that I heard, I don't know if it made it into the column in time, but an agent who represents some of the top receivers in the league told me he doesn't think that even 3 receivers go round 1. He thinks there's enough depth in round 2 and round 3 and round 4 at the receiver spot that he doesn't think you're going to see this run on receivers in round 1.
I I agree because they're not the receivers aren't good. You're right. There's like all the okay guys where you look at it and say this could be a wide receiver 3, this could be a wide receiver 4, this could be the tall guy that we use for matchups, this could be the skinny mini that we use in the slot, but you don't see with Travis Hunter and like I'm not a big fan of Trattoria McMillan. the
Right.
big
And
dude.
I like Matthew Golden a lot out of Texas, but I had a conversation with an offensive coach who told me that he's more speed than skill. And that was enough for me to think, you know what, maybe he doesn't go as early as I thought he was going to go.
He's more speed than skill. McMillan is more like height than speed or skill,
Yeah.
so to speak. The fellow who every name is escaping me at this point. I'm telling you, I'm out of my mind at this point. The wide receiver who's always drawing penalties. Uh, uh,
Iowa State kid, Jaden Higgins.
Not Jaden Higgins. He's the two Iowa State kids. One's the fast guy. One's the. I'm sorry. I'm trying to look things up on this, and it's complete disaster here. Luther Burden.
Luther Burden. Yeah.
Luther Burden, and there are some people who are high on him, and it's like this is a Debo who's even like more of a pain in the ass,
Bigger diva.
a bigger diva Debo,
Yes.
a bigger Debo diva, and like I don't see that. And then when you get past those guys, I mean, people are going to talk up Egbuka. Egbuka's a wide receiver 3 in the NFL.
He's a
Uh,
slot receiver, the straightforward slot receiver. I had a coach tell me that he thought that that Ohio State's scheme is what really helped him be as productive as he was in college.
I think that's part of it.
Yeah.
I think that's part of it. I think part of it is you had Marvin Harrison for a while. Now who is it? Jeremiah Smith, who's the
Yep.
young buck. And it's like, yeah, you're the wide receiver too. You've got this scheme, you have this program. And I mean, I've been like Terry McLaurin was a wide receiver 3 or whatever, but like that lightning doesn't strike over and over and over again.
Right.
You'll forgive me. I'm trying to look at the over under. I simply will not be able to pull it up. If you saw how many tabs I have open right now, it's
Oh, you're
embarrassing.
like me, man. It's the life of a thousand tabs, the
Yeah,
house
so
of a thousand tabs on my desktop.
it is nothing but tabs, and I'm seeing little Saints Fleur de Lis and Zoom tabs and overthecap.com. Fandango, what's that doing here? Pornhub. No, but what's that doing here? Getting back to like the actual on topic here. I'm gonna ask you who's most likely to make a big trade.
Yeah, I
Well,
think
who?
it's Howie. I think it's
Okay.
Howie and the Eagles. And, they have something like 22 picks over the next 2 years, which is just an obscene amount of bites at the apple in two draft classes for them. And they
Mm-hmm.
have this Dallas Goddard situation that's been looming over them all offseason. And, I spoke to a source back in January, leading up to the Senior Bowl, who floated the idea that the Eagles could trade Goddard and draft someone like a Jalen Ferguson or like an Elijah Arroyo,
Okay.
early in round two, that might be somebody they moved up to get Cooper DeJean early in the second round a year ago. You could see that happen again in the second round at tight end. And, you talk about, Loveland and Warren as the creme de la creme of this tight end class.
Mhm.
That's one of the deeper positions in the draft. There are really good tight ends you can get in round 2 and round 3. And I think the Eagles are looking to reset the clock financially because they have so many premium players they have to re-sign over the next couple of years. So, while the Saints could go and trade for a quarterback, I think it's more likely to see Howie make a splash.
Right. I think the Saints still could be in play to do that. I was thinking the Eagles, but I was thinking of them in terms of just like punting out of the first round where they're at. Because I think you can punt out of 32 right now.
Yeah,
Go down into like the top of the second. And yeah, Ferguson from Oregon would still be there. Mason Taylor from LSU would possibly still be there. There are a couple of these guys who really like are. It's funny because the Colts Ballard was talking about. I need a 3 down tight end. I
yeah,
need a 3 down tight end, which might necessarily. I know you have him getting Loveland. I don't know if they consider Loveland a 3 down tight end. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. But like that guy who can get out there and actually be a blocker and a force in a running game. I think Ferguson is a guy who could be that.
for sure. I mean, he was just a mauler in the running game as a blocker and had some really impressive numbers, yards after the catch and forced missed tackles at Oregon. He'd be a great fit in Indy if they don't go one of the top two.
Right, right. And then, but again, he'd probably be a good fit in Philly, where there's only so many footballs to go around. And while
Yeah,
Goddard is a very good weapon in the passing game, you can be a very good weapon in the passing game when everyone's worried about a handoff and then you run play action.
for sure.
Um, so we mentioned Goddard. What other
Trey
vet?
Hendrickson, I think, is a name to watch. I don't know that the Bengals are going to move him. That almost feels like false bluster to I don't know why you float that you could trade him and he you can go get an edge rusher when he's one of the premier players at the position across the league and arguably your best defender. But for the right price, I could see Hendrickson getting moved.
Yeah, that's first of all the rhetoric that came out of the Bengals around Hendrickson was weird.
Very,
Was very weird. Like he might just
very.
he might have to learn to cope. It's like you don't say that publicly.
Right. Not for somebody who's a defensive player of the year caliber player for you, and the one defensive piece that you had last year, which was the reason why you didn't make the postseason because Joe Burrow couldn't drag them across the finish line.
Right, right. And it's like, well, Miles Garrett, he gets an extension. Max Crosby, he gets an extension. We're waiting on Micah. Trey Hendrickson, you're just going to have to deal with the fact that life might throw you a curveball. Sign Katie Blackburn, the general manager, the executive vice president of the team. Banana pants. And we were just talking. It's like, well, Garrett might well say, look, here's Abdul Carter. You guys are going to combine for 30 sacks. This is exciting. If you talk to a Lions fan or look at any of the rhetoric coming out of the Lions, it's like, where are we going to get help for Aiden Hutchinson? Why didn't we get help for Aiden Hutchinson? Why didn't we get Joey Bosa? And like, oh, you want pass rushers in pairs and trios. Cincinnati's like, well, we can just draft his replacement. It's like,
Right. But if you're the Lions, Mike, I mean, you can get one of these top edge rushers in the first round. They're within your reach, I would think. Right?
right. Right, and the Lions can do that, and then even when you go down to where are they 30th overall, there's going to be decent quality. Maybe it's more of a one-dimensional guy. You
Or
could,
if you view that as your biggest need and your one hole that you have to fill, you
Mhm.
can justify trading up to go and get Mike Green or Shamar Stewart or one of these top guys.
right. I would also be on the phone with the Bengals, say, let's talk
Yes.
about Hendrickson. Hendrickson
Yes.
sounds terrifying. And another little thing that's going to happen is if the Giants do take Abdul Carter, Thibodeau should be a more affordable option where you get like a day two pick of some kind and you go get Thibs. And if you put him across from Aiden Hutchinson, he's a pretty scary guy.
And it's pretty scary in New York with Brian Burns and Abdul Carter.
Right,
It's a
right.
duo.
So right. Although I was pointing out, like, oh, this will be great. They'll have a whole bunch of sacks and it'll make up for the offense. That's what we were supposed to say last year with Thibs and Brian
Yes,
Burns. That's what we said for all of David Gettleman's era. It's like, well, with this defensive front, it doesn't matter if Daniel Jones isn't that good or if Eli's over the hill. Really, the same plan over and over again for the Giants.
for sure. And then you're still sticking your quarterback that you draft next year into an offense where you have one wide receiver, right?
Yes,
Because you don't take Travis Hunter.
right, exactly. Again, it's one offensive playmaker. Now it's Neighbors. Before that, it was Saquon. Before that was Odell,
Yes.
and a great defensive line, and everything else will just take care of itself. This is Giants football for the last, I guess, 13 years since 2011.
Mike, what do we have coming up on the two deep zone through the draft?
Well, a two deep zone on Friday morning, you'll see a first round update, and then I catch my breath. I catch
Okay.
my breath days, and then Monday and Tuesday the following week, the draft performance assessments. They're draft grades like you would expect. But one thing I don't do, I will be like chatting with my readers and subscribers, etc. You're not going to see me like on Saturday going wacky, trying to reset the board or things like that. We're going to do things quietly. I'm going to have a cocktail or two along the way, catch our breath, but there'll still be plenty of coverage. Let me guess, you're not catching your breath.
I don't expect to catch my breath. I will probably put out some round one grades on Friday morning.
Good.
Uh, Best picks that may be scratching my head, some letter grades assigned along the way, and still trying to map out the rest of the plan. But certainly some big picture takeaways for the column on Monday morning.
Oh, it's going to be amazing. How do you spend a draft? How do you do it? Big
Yeah,
blue.
I actually activate the command center with the three TVs. I got the
Mhm.
three networks to watch one thing.
Mhm.
The NFL draft in the basement. The wife and kids go and have a great day at the playground or play with the neighbor kids in the backyard. I'm left to my own devices with nitro cold brew coffees and bottles of water and junk food to
Yes.
go through and fuel the content that's being created.
What's the junk food of choice?
Yeah, I've been on a kick. The animal crackers, the
Oh,
Barnum and Bailey animal crackers. I can shove like handfuls of them in my mouth and go through a bag before you snap your fingers. In a perfect world, they sell these great like soft pretzel nuggets at Costco with the beer
oh,
cheese dip. Yeah, you fire some of
absolutely.
those up on Saturday at around noon before pick one, and you can dip and go. Is it so? How about you? Is there a cocktail involved during the proceedings?
During the first round, though, I stay sober until everything is totally written along the way. Triscuits used to be my poison. Just sitting there eating Triscuits, it gets messy.
Yes.
Yeah, it's messy. I
Yes.
wouldn't want a live camera on there during it. But I'll tell you what, I like I said, I catch my breath a little bit. Friday night, I'll be chatting. I'll be on Blue Sky, maybe a little bit on Threads. I'll be on the DVOA Discord. I'll be in with the Two Deep Zone subscribers. Then because I don't write for Saturday morning, it's up to you. You do what you want. You look like I think you're a little under the weather right now. You might want to pace yourself a little bit.
Tried to have my Michael Jordan game on this podcast. So a little under the weather. Tried to have the Michael Jordan. Not sure how that turned out, but we're here. We did it. We
Uh,
pulled it off.
but I've got special. I should have brought it out here. I've got a special deluxe Chimay quad.
Oh, that's the Saturday night.
That'll be the Saturday night cocktail to say this is done. Of course, Sunday morning I'm writing grades all day. You still
Yes.
you hit pause, you look at it, and then you discover, wait a minute, I didn't even realize the Cardinals drafted 38 guys or some crazy stuff
Right.
that like you don't even notice while the draft is live.
Exactly. Well, this has been a lot of fun, Mike. The draft is one of the 10 polls of the year. It's a lot of fun every year. Go ahead and subscribe to the Two Deep Zone on Substack. Follow Mike on Blue Sky at Mike Tanier. You can check me out on Blue Sky at Matt Lombardo. Subscribe to Between the Hash Marks on Substack. And go ahead and leave us those 5-star reviews in the Apple Podcast Store if you enjoy the pod. We'll read them on the air, even if you rip us and say, Matt, what are you thinking with all these running backs? Or you look like you just rolled out of bed with the flu. Well, I kind of did. We'll still read it, but please leave us the 5 stars because they help us grow the show and get found in the algorithm and all those things.
Absolutely be a big help. By the way, folks, whenever I'm sick, I just cancel the podcast. Matt is really pushing himself here to come out here and be with us, and I appreciate it, and I'm sure the listeners appreciate it too.
It's been a lot of fun. Mike, I'll talk to you next week. Enjoy the draft.
Enjoy the draft.